Did the old prophets actually meet angels on top of mountains? Or were they highly intelligent beings from a galaxy far, far away? Today, we're taking a look at 3 well-known sightings of UFOs. Because let's face it, we're not alone, and the evidence is everywhere.
In today's video, we're taking a look at some tragedies related to space exploration. Space is a dangerous place, and exploring it carries many risks. Even with all the precautions in place, accidents still happen. People have died. If you're curious to know more, let's check the video out. First up, we have the 2003 Columbia space disaster. On February 1st, the Columbia shuttle was returning to Earth following its 28th mission. As it entered the atmosphere, the shuttle broke up on re-entry. All 7 astronauts aboard died. This disaster, along with the high cost of space programs, led to the retirement of NASA's space shuttle fleet in 2011. Since then, NASA hasn't sent out any of its own manned shuttles back into space. An investigation was conducted. The problem had begun during Columbia's launch from Earth 16 days prior. A small piece of insulating foam broke loose from a fuel tank during launch. This foam pierced a small hole in the shuttle's left wing. During previous shuttle launches, the foam had detached without incident. However, on this occasion, the small hole in the wing led to depressurization. This caused the craft to break up due to atmospheric gases bleeding into the shuttle as it went through its speedy re-entry. Could NASA have prevented this tragedy? Perhaps, though it's hard to blame them when previous incidents caused no harm. The Columbia wasn't the first shuttle to explode. In 1986, the Challenger also suffered a similar fate. On its 10th mission, it broke apart 73 seconds after launch. The shuttle was carrying 7 astronauts, including Krista McAuliffe. McAuliffe was a high school teacher who had been selected as part of NASA's new Teacher in Space program. The shuttle crashed into the Atlantic Ocean from an altitude of approximately 50,000 feet. None of the crew on board survived. According to an investigation report, it was caused by faulty rubber O-rings. These were meant to separate the rocket boosters and stop fuel leaks. The freezing temperatures prevented the rings from sealing properly. Bob Ebeling, an engineer that worked on the Challenger shuttle, had warned them about this before, but NASA leadership refused to postpone the launch. This disaster led to widespread outrage and the temporary suspension of the space shuttle program. At least, that's the official reason for shutting the program down. Who knows? Perhaps there are other stranger reasons. Perhaps they discovered something dangerous out there. Speaking of disasters, the Soviet Union, America's main rival in the space race, had its fair share of tragedies too. One of these was the Soyuz 2 mission. The astronauts in this mission were the only 3 people who died in space. After America's Apollo moon landing, the Soviet Union was eager to make its mark with its own space program. In April 1971, they launched the world's first space station, Salyut 1. 2 months later, 3 cosmonauts took off on the Soyuz 11 rocket. They docked at Salyut 1 and spent 3 weeks aboard carrying out scientific observations. Everything seemed to be going to plan until the return trip. On June 30th, Soyuz 2 made a normal re-entry and landed without any incident. However, when ground operatives opened the hatch, all 3 cosmonauts were dead. Soyuz 11 had landed automatically. During its descent, a faulty air vent had opened, leading to cabin depressurization. None of the cosmonauts were wearing spacesuits. They quickly ran out of oxygen and suffocated to death approximately 30 minutes before landing. Following that disaster, stricter regulations were put in place. It became a requirement for cosmonauts and astronauts to wear spacesuits during any stage of a mission where depressurization could occur. Lastly, we have the Apollo 1 fire. The funny thing is, this disaster didn't even occur in space. Despite that, it still fits the topic. The Apollo 1 fire was one of the most infamous space exploration disasters. 3 astronauts lost their lives in a fire during training. On February 1st, 1967, Virgil I. Gus Grissom, Edward H. White, and Roger B. Chaffee were training at Cape Kennedy. They were running a launch countdown simulation in a cabin. This cabin was filled with a high concentration of oxygen. All of a sudden, A flash fire broke out inside the cabin. The oxygen allowed it to spread quickly. The astronauts in vain attempted to open the inner hatch. Simultaneously, the launch pad crew worked to open the outer 2 hatches. Unfortunately, their attempts were hampered by dense smoke and heat. By the time they opened the hatches, the crew had already perished. The sad thing is, NASA investigated and claimed their burns were likely survivable. Instead, they died of inhaling toxic gas from the smoke. If they had been able to open those doors, the 3 men would be alive. Even their space rivals in Moscow extended sympathies. The Soviet authorities sent a message saying that they were deeply grieved at the news of the tragedy at Cape Kennedy. Even today, space remains a wild and dangerous place. Scientists are working around the clock to improve conditions for astronauts. Will they be able to overcome these risks? It's hard to say. Make sure to comment below on what your thoughts are, and don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Thanks for watching the video. Be sure to tune in next week.